Joe,
Thank you.
thanks for joining me this morning for this conversation. You and I have known each other for over 15 years now. I can't believe it's been that long. Um, I met Joe when what was your title at the City of Milwaukee, Joe?
I was the management facilities engineer when we met.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Joe was my mentor. He taught me really what maintenance in facility environment is about. Joe, also tell a little bit about your life after the City of Milwaukee.
Well, I'll try to make this brief, but the some of the work that I've done in education and other places is has changed quite a bit. Where I'm actually, more teaching these kinds of methods using data all over the world. I left the city after 10 years. I had 220 buildings there. And before that, I was at Milwaukee Public Schools, where there was 160 buildings. And then I continued on, and I taught power engineering for a few years at the local technical school for stationary engineering, PE, preparation, those kinds of things. And I got my PhD in nonlinear dynamics from Marquette University, and kind of realized while I was working at the city and obtaining this degree that I can use this right on the job today. And that's where I really got connected with Harry and what we could do with data. Later, I left the city and I went to Milwaukee Area Technical College, and I developed 5 or 6 different programs, of which Harry helped me on one of the courses from a grant from the Department of Energy. And from there, I went to Pittsburgh and started a brand new school called the Energy Innovation Center in collaboration with Pitt, Carnegie Mellon, Duquesne, CCAC, and the local community. And then I left there after that was a consulting job. I retired from the city and MATC, then came back to Milwaukee, and I've been teaching economics, statistics, mathematical modeling here and throughout Asia, Europe, South America. The university sends me to these places, and some I went commissioned through my LLC. I work for Johnson Controls. That's been actually a lifelong partnership. They're big in Milwaukee, so you can't really not be connected to them. Now I wrote a couple of books, and I'm the editor-in-chief of an academic peer-reviewed scholarly journal. And basically, I do a lot of curriculum now too, and the curriculum is relative to what we're going to talk about today. It's mostly about data. The last 2 have been Six Sigma and Lean, with a strong emphasis on reduction of carbon. And efficiency is kind of at the center of those 2 kinds of courses and certifications through the university. So that's it. Other than that, I'm a musician, and so when I really do retire, I'm going to get away from all this stuff as far as I can go.
Well, Joe, I'm blessed to have a friend and mentor like you with the depth of knowledge and experience that you bring to the table. Eagle has one of a world-class maintenance management software system, and one of the questions that we're asked from time to time is what should be an objective with someone putting together a CMMS system? It's a lot of work. It takes discipline and things like that. Why would I bother when I'm busy already?
Well, that is the essential question as to why somebody would actually engage in it. It has to be useful to you. It has to be easy to use. It has to be something that you're gonna have the return on that investment, of course, and that will make your job that much easier. And it does all of those things. The obvious is that you inventory your systems, you inventory your preventative maintenance. You have one place to go to for all of your equipment, and that and your staff too. A place that you can go to make sure that your staff is aware of how to do their job. And so that's the front end, I call it. Those are the things that you would really use in order to sell the idea of getting a CMMS. That you have this one location, you can have all the cut sheets, the training manuals, all the sequences of operations for different kinds of systems, the scripts behind AI, and all of the other stuff that a technician would need to have everything at their disposal to do the job and make sure that there's no downtime. There's no such thing as downtime. You can't have that.
Yeah, I went to a webinar or a seminar in Chicago when I first joined Eagle over 15 years ago. And they had a speaker from Allstate, I think it was, and he got up and he said, I have 637 toilets in my building. I have 1,852 windows. I have 67 urinals or whatever the number was. And he went on and on and on, and he listed specifically what he had to maintain. And Joe, if somebody doesn't know what they have to maintain, how do they know what it takes to maintain it?
Right. Yeah. That how many air handlers, how many boilers, how many chillers, how many pumps, how many compressors, how many, the list goes on. Of course you have to know that. If you don't know that, you're kind of negligent in your responsibilities as a manager of these kinds of systems, that you have to know, not only, how many, but then the staff too. How many people do you have working? What is the capacity of that staff in terms of their performance? All of these kinds of questions are answered through the CMMS. You cannot manage by walking around and looking. That is just virtually impossible for human beings. You have to have data in order to understand your systems, because there's just too much out there. And for you to really understand what's going on, you need to look at the whole thing. And there's only one way to do that. And that's by looking at this data. Now, like I said, that's the front end of this. There's another side to this that I think is as important once you get over that hurdle of inventorying everything. Then it's a matter of, well, now I know all of this stuff. I know about my systems. I know the behavior. That's the word we use in mathematics. But we know how the system works. And what do I do with it now? What can I do to improve this? How can I, glean information, understand how to make these kinds of systems better, performing at higher levels, more efficient, staff that puts out more work, smarter work about what they're doing. And so then those questions are answered through CMMS. If you've got the wherewithal, to be able to perform some kind of basic analysis on that data. And that's where my expertise actually is on that side. So, when you use methods of improvement and you're talking to the CEO or the CFO or the COO, and you're talking about data and say Six Sigma projects and things like that, that's a language they understand. That's a language they want to hear, because essentially what you're saying is, I'm going to make your bottom line a lot better, through our department. And with that extra funding, you can hire more staff, buy better equipment, and it kind of spirals in your favor. And I call that, on your way to a promotion, if you're in that position. And that's usually what happens if someone does all of those things and make sure that they can use this kind of data. So that's, to answer your question directly, there's kind of two sides to that. One's the hard side, the very tangible people, equipment, systems. And then the other side is once you get this downloaded into spreadsheets, that's when you can really get into, the predictive analytics. You get into more, understanding your systems and optimizing. That's the key word, optimizing performance of your people and your systems. As all of these asset management systems, with all the other, I counted about 21 systems that we had back then. So I'm sure there are more now. In a high-rise building, just one, for example, let alone 100 buildings.
So one of the things that we run into from time to time is OSHA fines. People get fined for the darndest things in their organizations. We've had serious clients that before they had their systems in place had serious accidents. And so one of the components that we look at when people implement a system is the risk management component to reduce risk. Making sure that if I'm supposed to do something, that I do it in a timely fashion, that I make sure it's done correctly by the people that are going to perform the task, whether it be a contractor or my own people. So how do I, that's sort of on the hard side, as you call it, of the system, but it equates to dollars and cents ultimately in risk abatement.
And how do I document that? That's the real question, because when they come in, if they do come in, they're overwhelmed, but when they do come in, that they're looking for the documentation, right? That's one of the things. I remember when I was working at Milwaukee Public Schools, a guy, he was an electrician, and he went up to a service panel, and all of a sudden he's flying across the room, literally backwards. And he flew up against, it was a small service room, a closet. And he was paralyzed, for life. This was before arch flash protection, all the PPE that people are required to have now, and for good reason. You don't want something like that happening the humanitarian side of things more than, how much is it going to cost me? But yeah, the documentation. And so if you've got a system, and you've done these work orders and they're in a timely basis, even the simplest of things, you can just sift and sort and boom, 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 put together your report, and there it is. Here you go, Mr. or Mrs. OSHA. I remember the asbestos, right? That was a big deal. Big inventory. Had big books in the engineer's office, and they're supposed to be available for lead and all kinds of other things that you had to make available. Well, that was a very arduous task to put all of that together. Well, with the CMMS, you can document all of that and what you've done, whether it's grab bag, whatever kind of mitigation activities that you're engaged in with the staff. They open up and close work orders to get these kinds of things done, or you produce those work orders and then they get them done and you have it at your fingertips. And the real reason, of course, is that you don't want anyone to get hurt. You care about people. That's the bottom line. We all know OSHA's a thorn in the side, and in everybody's side. But at the same time, it's probably good they're around.
So one of the things that we've implemented in Proteus are things like risk questions, so that you can query the technician before they access the work order on the mobile device. That allows them to answer positively that, yes, I'm qualified to work on this, and yes, I have the right protective gear. We've also partnered with organizations to have lockout tagout PDFs pop up, so that the technician has the ability to have the lockout tagout PDF in front of them, so they can identify all the sources of energy on the particular piece of equipment, and have to indicate that they've in fact disabled it before they can get at the work order. So, you know, people think of a CMMS as just listing the equipment and what I need to PM, but it involves safety, it involves reliability, it involves the quality people. So it's a fairly comprehensive system today, and yet some people still use it as a calendar.
Right, right. There's a formal process, and you can rank order the type of hazard that it is, you know, from 1 to 10, or however you want to code it. And then the level of exposure and the frequency of exposure, the time of exposure. And you do you can do it any way you want, average, multiply, summation in a spreadsheet. And then you can kind of pinpoint those that are really sticking out, you know, the greatest number, and you go after those. Well, okay. You can have something built in. That's accident prevention. There's a pyramid they use in organizations that have a lot of hazards, and then they rank order these things, and they go after those things that are really screaming, you know, this is about to happen, and then work their way down to get rid of the rest. And of course, that's when OSHA comes in. You hand them this book, you know, of all of the things that you've been doing. You know, they may read it, they may not, but they'll be impressed that you're so organized, you know, and that you produce this kind of documentation right away. So yeah, there it is again. It's the data. Now that takes a little bit of analysis, right, to be able to do that. So that's kind of peering into the other side. You know, when you got the data, you got these things you need, but, you know, how do I generate, you know, results? And what do these results mean? And then act on those results. That is when you've really got something. And that's when you improve.
So the tools that we provide have a lot of capability, but what about let's talk a little bit about the human component. I mean, I see people who have the tool and, you know, they use a screwdriver for a pry bar, the shortcut methodology, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about how human component plays into all of this.
Yeah, that's where actually I saw the most results. You know, is in the human component, because, you know, as a manager, we're notorious for understanding systems inside out, but nobody else knows what the heck we're talking about, right? And, you know, it's just like, oh, I understand this. How come all of you, you know, you 20 people or 100 people, whatever, don't understand this? You know, and so the obvious is making sure that your staff is trained at the same level that you are, because you want their brain. You know, they're smarter than you are. Let me put it like that. They are smarter than you are about the systems because they got their hands on them. You're a manager and you're operating these kinds of systems, the CMMS and all the other types of expert systems that you've got to contend with. That's a lot of work. And so they're out there actually doing it. So they can do more to benefit the results than you can. And you have to keep that in the forefront of your thinking when you go through this. Now, the training obviously is one, but there's also creating an atmosphere where we're all in this together, documenting the work that we're doing to be able to show people that we're worth something, that they don't outsource us, that because we're doing 12,000 work orders a year. So then the CMMS becomes a friend rather than Big Brother looking over your shoulder, watching everything you're doing, right? And so you have to get over that hump. If you don't, you're going to be fighting for the rest of your career. You have to get over that hump and make sure that they understand this is not a threat. This is something to document what we're doing in order to make ourselves valuable. When I was using it, I remember telling the staff a couple of times, because they had a lot of training. They had a lot of, not just on here, on energy management, chiller systems, boiler systems. They had training all the time. We used to do our training at the Milwaukee School of Engineering in their lab with Johnson Controls. And so they had a lot of good training. They had training at Eagle, fantastic training, so they understand these systems. And so once they're all trained, I'd say to them, I'm preparing you, because they'd say, why are you spending all the, well, we get a return on that investment because you did that much better at a job. And I'd say, you're able to go across the street and get a job. You can get a job anywhere you want. I said, what? You mean you want us to leave? No. What I mean is that you're competitive. You're doing this job better than anybody. Now, I implemented standards. Average times it takes to close out a work order of 120 work orders. And Harry, you know this case real well. And I had a time, average time it took for each one of these 120 tasks. And that's about what it was in buildings. When you really get to know your system, say, what are all the things that these folks do? 120 average time. And then I took the cost because the hours are on there. And then I checked with a vendor we outsource all these folks and have somebody else do it, or another company, if you're the vendor, and how much it costs for them to do it. It was almost twice. So then when that information came back, everybody in the staff, they love this system. Because there's no way you're going to outsource or change the staff when they're half the prices going outside and getting a contract somewhere else. So
one of the things, Joe.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Component is extremely important.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that we do as a vendor is when we're doing that training with people like your staff, we're listening to them as to how we can make the system better and more effective and easier to use for them. In fact, I just had a meeting with one of our clients a couple of days ago, and they gave me a little short laundry list of, geez, if you could do these few things, it would just make our life easier, okay? And we're the type of vendor, our product, that we continuously improve listening to the people that are using it. Because again, that supports the management in their quest to make the system usable and get their staff engaged in it. And by listening to the people that are using it and helping them modify it, modify the system, making those improvements, because business changes, business needs change, and business processes are changing, particularly with COVID. So we're constantly working on upgrading the software to meet those little things that will make it easier and better for the client on a day-to-day basis. And we've got clients with 30 and 40 facilities throughout the United States that are on a single system. We've got clients with in different industries, and they all have a little bit different need, but we're able to help satisfy those needs by listening to them. And today, the system can integrate in real time to the factory floor. We can pick up data in real time, helping record in real time the downtime versus the uptime. We can integrate to purchasing systems like SAP or Oracle with clients so that they're able to make their purchasing process easier because they like our maintenance system. It works really well. So we can do things like that today, and we listen to people to help that manager make that use of that system friendlier and more competitive.
Yeah, now you're really talking the language of continuous improvement, right? That you do listen to the people. This goes back to Deming with his ideas on the staff. You know, that the staff always can give you advice, and you need to listen to them. I remember working with a great designer. It was a bridge designer. You know, in Pittsburgh, they have more bridges than anywhere else in the world. And the bridge designer said that, you know, this is one of the world famous people. And he said that while I'm going through the process of commissioning this bridge, I'm working hand in hand with the iron worker foreman. And if the iron worker foreman doesn't agree with what I'm doing, I change it, because that person knows more about what's going on the ground than I do. And so you have to have that philosophy, and you're absolutely right. You have to listen to the staff. If you don't, you know, then, you know, the consequences of not listening are that they're not going to give you the information you need in order to continuously improve. This is what a lot of Six Sigma projects are based on: define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And listening to the staff and getting that information and feeding it back and changing as a result of that is a surefire way to let the staff know, first of all, that you respect them, and you respect their work, and you respect their opinion about these things. And that's critical. You know, and the second thing is what you get from that person, what they actually are telling you. So it's really important to get them involved and to listen to what they're saying. That's.
We have, you know, I've run across clients that don't have the resources to get the job done. So what you find them doing is turning off the auto generation of PMs. So they'll have a PM from January that they finally get done in May. And then they have no record, you know, in the meantime, they could have 6 or 8 breakdowns on that piece of equipment because it hasn't been PM'd. You know, the reality is that they ignore the PMs and just do break fix. And if we've got somebody listening in on this with an organization that's running like that, how can we help them?
Well, yeah, let me start by saying that I remember some pieces of equipment, very few, and you might remember this too. We had a motor, an exhaust fan in a bathroom way across town in a small, right next to a Quonset hut. No real consequence. Okay, let it burn out. You know, we're not going to take care of that. And it'll be reactive.
Right.
Right. And so we react to those, you know, okay. But, you know, 95%, 98%, you know, something around there. I'm a data guy, so I don't like to say, you know, a lot, you know, an awful lot. The vast majority of your pieces of equipment, you know, it's far better to be proactive. And the whole idea is that once you get over that hump and stay on schedule, that you'll have less work, because these systems as everybody knows, when one piece fails, it leans on the next one. It's like the human body and organs in the body. When one fails, it leans on the next one. And so you've got to, you're pedaling backwards. You know that. And if there's a need for more staff, and I know you're pressured by the people on top to squeeze down as much as you can, but you have to make the case. You have to have the number of people, and you have to be more proactive than reactive. And so it takes a lot of, let's say, human expertise to be able to persuade, people that this is going to have a positive result. And I really feel for people who are in that position, that they're being squeezed so hard that they can't attend to that PM out there when there's a fire inside, and where you are. Yeah, I understand that, but you have to get over there. You have to keep pushing, because ultimately, at the end of the day, your work's going to be so much easier when you prevent these things rather than react to these things. It's always better to be proactive than reactive. And it's not just in CMMS, it's everything. It's just a way to conduct yourself in the working world. If it's your own job when you sit down at your desk, it's the same thing. Do you want to be 100% reactive, or are you going to do anything proactive? Are you going to take the initiative to change things for the better rather than just letting it come back and bombard you later on when it all fails? So everything becomes a failure.
So we get into the cost of, defining the cost of deferred maintenance and the lack of resources and the ability to communicate that need to management. That's really a tough job, but it's a job that the facility manager or the maintenance manager or the plant, in conjunction with the plant manager, it's something that needs to be communicated. And by allowing the CMMS to give you data, you can take that data and present it in a positive fashion to support the need for additional people. So if you didn't get that PM down, and that you were supposed to have 3 or 4 that were supposed to occur also, it's a point in time where you want to think about how do I present to the management of the organization that we really need more people to get the preventive done so we don't have these production breakdowns. A lot of guys have no idea to what the cost of an hour of lost production is, lost opportunity.
Right. What I used to do too, I remember there was a period that when we were going through this transition that we would bring in a contractor occasionally when there was just too much going on a temporary basis, on a job basis, and try to take care of those things so that we can keep the ball rolling and stay ahead of the curve. And sometimes that works, but then you've got that time delay. You want to react to these things as quick as possible. And then you want to take care of all of your PMs, your predictive and preventative maintenance as well. So that's another avenue where, if someone says, no, we can't hire another full-time person, there's always, a part-timer or a contractor on job basis when it's just, everybody's busy and we've got this emergency that comes up. Okay, we're gonna use this contractor for this one job, and it won't cost nearly as much as, say, hiring somebody. But that was just for a brief period. We wound up just taking care of it ourselves because we did have electricians, carpenters, plumbers, masons, and all the other trades. But they were in other departments or busy. Like, I don't know if you remember Nestor, no, I forget these guys' names. Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Well, let's talk about some of our more sophisticated clients. Tell me, what is a climate action plan, Joe? How do
Oh,
I get a climate action plan?
okay. Yeah, this is, I'm glad you asked that question. Uh,
I don't ask the
CMMS
easy
is,
ones.
yeah, CMMS is required if you're going for LEED certification, right? It's not, there's no points involved.
Okay.
And LEED certification is, the United States Green Buildings Council, and it's a certification for a building that it's at this high level of energy efficiency, water usage, and certain kinds of expertise. It really is way beyond code, right? The code is the floor. Well, this is well above that, and when you have a LEED emblem on the outside of your building or inside of the building, it really shows that this is a high quality building, and it's very efficient as well. Well, you're required to have a computerized maintenance management system to even apply for certification. Now, climate action plans, they're an account of all of the, first of all, carbon that the building is responsible for. And so there's emissions type 1, type 2, type 3. And the type 1 are direct if you have combustion right on site, like, for example, boilers. And if you have incinerators, they're kind of outlawed now in a lot of places. And then other types of combustion activities that emit carbon. And as it suggests, it's a way to inventory your carbon production. And what I like to do is not just inventory carbon, but I convert that to dollars and carbon back, so that when you start becoming more efficient with your systems, you can document it in carbon for the sustainability of your building, and it can be used for marketing purposes, and it does reduce the carbon output. So it's important from an environmental perspective, but also the dollars. Carbon is expensive, energy is expensive, water, but a climate action plan takes into account all of the people who work there, their commuting, any air travel that people are engaged in, the trash, all of the chemicals, the emissions, the effluents, everything that building is pulling from external sources like the power plant and everything else that's out there, and everything that it's pushing itself out to the atmosphere's externalities. And so you've got this account for the entire ecological footprint for this building. Now, if you're short on staff, this is something you're not going to want to engage in. This is a full-time job for all practical purposes. I did a few of them, and they require a lot of work. You can go to, I can send out a spreadsheet to give you an example of what one of these climate action plan spreadsheets looks like. And you'll see right away that you need a really good clerical person working on this and entering data once that person gets connected to all the different sources where that these emissions and that input and output, this like organism called a building, produces and takes in. Because a building is like us, right? It takes in gases, it takes in liquids, it takes in solids. This kind of gross, but it emits gases, it emits liquids, and it emits solids. And so that's an account of that process. In short, I know I could go on. I've taught courses in this, so I'm not gonna take too much time. But it's really if you are concerned about the environment and you happen to be working for an organization that really cares about this, do it, because you'll be on their good list for sure.
So one of the things, Joe, that people need to have is they have to have some quality data.
Yeah.
And data has to be consistent, right? How we've seen in the past where a CMMS system in particular, the point that should be collecting this information has too many things that are not standardized, right? Somebody will put in, I buy this in an EACH, and somebody will put in, they buy it in an EA. And well, Proteus has sort of addressed some of those types of data inconsistencies. We can manage the consistency in certain areas very easily. And we've even helped clients put specific rules in place where if I fill in this piece of information and it's this level of a breakdown, I need to put this field in and so forth. But how do you tie all that into using predictive maintenance through multiple systems integration with artificial intelligence? I mean, that's a big question, but.
Well, you know, the integration with, say, energy management, right? That you have a running tally of how long a piece of equipment has been running, and you've also got a running tally of different conditions of that piece of equipment. And so what I like to do is to set up a degradation curve, and that degradation curve on those pieces of equipment is based on the change of rate of change. So there's a derivative involved with the instruction and the sequencing, the intelligence behind this. And when it gets to this point, you know, this other thing goes into effect. And so that sequence takes place when it reaches, when this other actuation or condition changes, then this happens, and it just keeps on going. So AI, of course, goes a lot further, right? It responds to changes out there, and it learns about different kinds of external factors that are playing into these equations, essentially. And so the simple one is to look at the degradation of a piece of equipment. Let's say it's heat, let's say it's vibration, accelerometer, thermography, or whatever you're looking at. And it gets to a certain point, is easy, but it's always going to degrade over time. So we're looking at the rate of change, that there's a curve in that's the point at which you send out the work order, you know, to make sure that you're there before it turns into something else, not just when it gets to, you know, 80 degrees, I don't know, you know, whatever you want to use. And so that's a much better way to use predictive maintenance based on conditions with pieces of equipment. It activates the work order. So these two systems have to talk to each other, obviously. So as you know better than I do, you know, you make sure your nomenclature is identical and all of those things in place so that they can talk to each other. And so you've got to look at the end result, right? And even though you're in this thing and you're trying to optimize all of these kinds of systems and make sure there's no downtime, but at the same time, you're getting efficient. You're getting more efficient with your system. And so that efficiency, you know, that needs to be accounted for, because that's something you're responsible for, the longevity of the piece of equipment. That's something you're responsible for. So it makes you more valuable to the organization.
Okay. Well, and, you know, you use the word predictive maintenance, using integrated technology, vibration sensors, real time, or heat sensors, or on pumps or something like, can cut down the requirement for this monthly maintenance that you might do, and instead do it when it's needed, right? So it's another way to help the maintenance facility operations leapfrog from that firefighting aspect to more of a predictive environment using artificial intelligence and sensors and so forth. And we're seeing a lot of that today. because it's hard to find good quality maintenance people. You know, controls people and you know, HVAC people, and they're hard to get. And so by using artificial intelligence, you can extend your staff to be more of into a more predictive mode. So
That's
we're
right.
coming up on our time, Joe. Is there anything that we should cover before we close out?
Well, I guess, you know, in terms of the use of the data, yeah, we covered a lot of territory here. So I like this format, you know, that we're talking more than going through PowerPoint slides.
Right.
PowerPoint slides. But, you know, I think that the bottom line here, if you can't measure it, you don't know. You know, I mean, it seems so obvious, and I know it's been said 1,000 times, but, you know, CMMS allows you to, you know, at the least, right, measure what it is that you're doing. And if you're trying different things to improve, you're engaged in different kinds of activities that are aspects of continuous improvement, just because you want to improve your staff, you want to improve your pieces of equipment, you want to reduce your downtime or eliminate your downtime. You can't get there without measuring. You have to measure everything, and everything is measurable, even the people, right? The time that it takes to close out a work order, average time to take. This is the oldest industrial engineering, industrial psychology question in history. You know, how long does it take to do this? You know,
right.
And it's amazing how many people don't know. You know, you really have to. You know, the CMMS. That's the biggest benefit I got from CMMS. It is how long does it take for people, and how to optimize the performance of equipment, and that includes efficiency. It includes, you know, carbon and all of the other aspects of the ecological footprint of your building.
Good advice, Joe. Thank you.
Oh yeah.
Well,
it's important.
I want to thank everybody.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Facilities people are the most important people on earth. They are absolutely on their watch. They've got their finger on the pulse of the meter, right? And so with climate change and with all the things that are going on out there and the use of resources, the facilities people are the most important people in that supply chain of energy. Absolutely. So you know, that's something to remember, that you have a very important job that you're able to, you know, try to change what that meter is doing, reducing. And nobody can do it more than a facilities person. You know, I talk about transportation, that's only 27% of the carbon. Buildings are all of the rest. Okay.
Well, thank you, Joe. And thank you, audience. If we didn't get to your question, we'll get to you separately. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to answering more questions in the future. Joe, good to see you. Good to work with you again.
Anytime.
Keep in touch, and we appreciate everything. Thank you.